I want to start off by thanking everybody who's been participating in the conversations across Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube around this situation involving Burton Cummings and the Guess Who, because I feel like finally a conversation's happening between the press, music historians, industry insiders, musicians, even the fan base, the music consumers. For far too long, I feel like this has been kept at a very high surface level, the clickbait headline world. And the reality is that the solution that's going to benefit everybody is probably a few layers below the surface, which is going to require tough conversations to take place in order to get down into that level. The tough conversations are happening, at least among music fans. It is happening on social media. And by and large, I'd probably say 90% of the comments that I'm reading are people, regardless of the side of the fence that they stand on, they are being respectful. They are trying to approach it from a conversational level, sharing their views, their perception, their opinions about this, and their concerns, their questions. And while, yes, there are passions that are bubbling up, dialogue is happening for the most part, and I think that's great, and I want to thank everybody for keeping it respectful. Obviously, there are those trolls that are out there that don't want to have a dialogue. They just want to hurl insults, and that's meaningless to me. But for everybody else, thank you. I do want to address a couple questions that have come my way a few times. The second one is kind of complex, so I'm going to start with the easy one first, which is, do I think the band can overcome this? In short, yeah, I do. In fact, not only do I think they can overcome it, I think this is one of those type of challenges that as the solutions start to present themselves, and I know that ideas are being batted around, that when they get to the other side, I actually think they'll be in a better place than they were to begin with. The solution, in my eyes, isn't necessarily about Burton Cummings restoring the license. That would be nice, not only for the Guess Who, I think that'd be nice for him himself, as I explain here, because the real secret here, or the real solution, is their new music. Within their concerts, nearly 50% of their set list was actually made up of new music, and I have reason to believe that that was probably going to continue to grow. That's where they want to, rest their future. This is a band, contrary to what Burton has put out there. They're not sitting there in the back corner somewhere going, oh, how can we pull one over on the consumer? How can we make them think that we are the classic musicians? To the contrary, I've talked to these guys. They love the legacy. They love the music. The guitarists have talked about the influence of Randy's iconic guitar riff. So there's a real strong respect there. In addition, man, to see them just rally around and support founder Gary Peterson, a lot of love, a lot of positive energy in this group, a lot of respect for the classic fans. But there's also a want for them to have their opportunity to play their music. And that's really where the success lies, that as more fans get exposed to the new music, as more people demand to buy a concert ticket so they can hear the new stuff live, which, as great as it is on the recording, it's awesome live. And I hope you get the opportunity to check it out. So as more people move towards the new music, that's going to set up the band for a really important future. And a lot of the argument that people, and I was this way probably a few years back, you think the preservation of a legacy is ensuring that the musicians that you remember being associated with a song remain in the band. But that's not really the preservation of a legacy. That's the preservation of a memory. The legacy, to preserve it, has to continue on into the future. Stories have to be told. Music needs to be played. The best way to kill a legacy is to silence it, to make it fall silent. You don't hear it, you don't talk about it, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it just goes bye-bye. Which ironically is exactly what Burton Cummings just did. He silenced the legacy, he destroyed it. And if he understood that you've got a band out there putting out new music, which, yes, is going to involve some classic fans becoming fans of the new music, but you're going to have a lot of new fans coming in that maybe were never aware of the Guess Who. And through these concerts, they would have been exposed to the classic hits. They would have been exposed to the stories of Burton Cummings. They would have been exposed to the legacy. So Burton really did a lot here to damage the legacy, contrary to what he's telling people. So in short, yes, I do think they can overcome this, and I do think they are going to overcome it, which is pretty exciting to see, because they're forging a pathway that a lot of other bands that are going through very similar legal battles right now will be able to follow suit. So more to come on that as it develops. Now, the second question gets a lot more complicated. Anybody that's followed me probably has seen my pieces on Little River Band. So I've had folks ask me the question, Dean, I'm confused. It looks like with Little River Band, you support the founders, or with the Guess Who, you're supporting the newer lineup. So how do you square that? And I don't look at this as a battle between classic members and new members. I see this more as a protection of a legacy. In the case of Little River Band, I think it's tragic how some of the founders lost the rights to the band name. I'm not saying it was nefarious or deliberate. I think actions were probably taken without much thought to what was happening. But I do think there's questions about, for example, the Australian trademark being allowed to lapse and then the U.S. trademark being moved to a new corporate entity. A lot of it's just a bad situation. But I've never once referred to Stephen Housden's ownership as illegitimate. I've never referred to them as a cover band, tribute band, anything like that. I think that's just a really tragic situation. My issue with the current iteration of the Little River Band is I don't feel like they're trying to protect the legacy. From what I understand, it doesn't sound like any of the founding songwriters are seeing any royalties from any of the concerts. The current Little River Band has recorded the classic hits. Doesn't sound like any money's making its way back to the founders for that. In addition, during the shows, they never tell stories about the founders or the classic lineup. I would like them to say the names, introduce the American audience or reintroduce them to the names of Graham Goebel, B. Birtles, Glenn Shorrock, David Briggs, George McArdle, Derek Polici. Tell the story, say the names, preserve the legacy, keep it going. It would be wonderful to hear Wayne Nelson, who's the actual recorded voice on Night Owls. In fact, he was a session musician when he recorded that song. I would love to hear him tell the story about how Graham Goebel wrote the song and actually insisted that Wayne be the vocalist on it, which would further drive a wedge between him and Glenn Shorrock, eventually leading to Glenn leaving the band. It'd just be a wonderful testament to Graham and a fascinating part of the legacy of the band. He should tell the story. So that's my issue there. It feels like there's a deliberate erasure happening of the foundation, the origins of the band, and I'd like to see that taken care of. In addition to that, the current version of the Little River Band have recorded some new music a few years back. Some of the songs are really good. I'd be more than happy to support the new music, but I want to see them change their behavior in the way that they're respecting the legacy of the band. So that's my issue there. Now, if you really think about it, it's kind of strange because what you've got is, with the Little River Band, you have founders who no longer own the name, but they do own all the music. The Guess Who, you now have a band that owns the name, but they don't own the classic hits. They don't own the music. So it's two sides of a same coin, and you could say that that's different arguments, but if you really step up to a higher layer and look at the real problem at hand, you'll see that it's representative of just how big of a problem this is, and you can look across the industry and see the problem in one form or another with a number of bands. So this really needs to be addressed, and a lot of it is getting music consumers to begin to realize they need to think differently about classic rock bands. A new band is just fighting to find relevance within the market base. A classic rock brand not only is trying to find relevance, but it's trying to also protect a legacy, which makes a different, more complex problem. So we have to address it differently. And the music consumers, you and me, we actually play a really big role in this solution. So I'm going to keep my thoughts coming. I'm going to continue to respond to comments. I thank everybody for keeping the dialogue respectful and understand that this really is a much bigger problem than the Guess Who, and it's something that needs to be addressed.